1,968 hours. That's how many hours I worked in 2019. Hey everyone, Jason here, and today I wanted to share with you not only how many hours I worked in 2019, but a detailed breakdown of where all of that time went. And just in case you missed it, over pretty much all the vlogs from this year up until this point have been sharing my vision, goal setting, and project planning process. And I thought a great way to wrap it up before I start diving into YouTube ads and all the fun marketing stuff again would be to show how I spent my time in 2019. So please go ahead and comment below with your feedback on where you were most surprised with these numbers. So I used a free tool to export everything out of my Google Calendar. I of course removed everything that wasn't a work time block, and that is going to be the Excel sheet that you're looking at now. So over here on the right-hand side, if I can scroll over, the quadrant and system columns are something that I created, but the tool gives you the start, end, the title of your time block, and then of course how many hours. And so each line is a time block from 2019. So you can see this goes on and on. Oops, this goes on and on and on. So there's a lot of information here. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to the top because I messed up. And we'll go ahead and go through an actual summary as opposed to going item by item, because that would be ridiculous, right? I'll link up in the description if you want to spend 3.5 to 4 hours doing this for yourself. So this is based on 215 working days over 10 months. August is out because I was completely sick. I didn't do any work at all. And then I initially started this project in December, so the month wasn't over yet. So that's pretty much why it's technically 10 months. I did not remove any other sick days, and the 215 is the actual work days. I'm not including weekends here. So I'm averaging everything over an actual work week. And this daily average of 9.2 includes regular sick days, because I think it's really important to include that, because as you go through this, if you go through this, something that I noticed was there was a definite ebb and flow in terms of really high productive weeks, and then the next month I would get sick and it would almost make up for it. So average wound up being around 9. So over the course of the entire year, I spent 42% of my time on team stuff, or 828 hours. Now, team stuff is administrative and founder type things where you're doing accounting, you're doing project management, you're planning, you're doing communication with your team, replying to emails and comments from your team. This is internal stuff. And so I think that's not really ever going to go away as a founder or business owner. Then 45% of my time was spent on content creation, of course. And then just 2%, or 58 hours over the entire year, was spent on actual sales, which I know sounds really low, but it also points to the power of content marketing. Because I was spending so much time on content, that was essentially our lead generation process. Most of the sales funnel time was spent on actual sales calls and then just building landing pages. So that was pretty cool, but we definitely need to ramp that up this year, because only spending 60 hours to essentially sell your services over an entire year is pretty ridiculous, especially considering how much we've been able to grow as an agency. And then finally, product, 187 hours over the entire year. I do want to note, though, that we have a team and I have a business partner, and they handle 95% of the client work. So it's not like when we have our clients, we're able to produce the income that we do and only work 187 hours. There's a lot more in there. I would say it's closer to probably 1,200 hours for the entire year across everyone who's working on client services. So that does it for the summary. Breakdown to a weekly 45.8. I'm actually coming out with an ideal work hours video in a few weeks, where actually I'll just spoil it for you. The ideal hour, absolute max you can do without starting to hurt your own biology, is pretty close to 45.8. It's higher than 45.8, but it's not higher than 50. I'll guarantee that. So comment below what you think the maximum hours a week you could work without borrowing from your tomorrow. So I'm very curious what you think that number would be. So what I want to do now is scroll down to the actual details. So what I did is I created a second column. Instead of just having team, content, sales funnel, and product, what I did is I broke down a little bit more, not super detailed, but just enough so you could see specifics on how all of these big quadrants break out. And the first one is going to be team. So when it comes to running our actual agency, 31% of my time is spent on operations, and luckily 20%, I'm actually very proud to say this is spent on development. And so those two I'm very, very happy with. What I'm definitely not happy with is how much time I'm spending on communication. Because right now, communication, the way I tracked last year, that actually includes emails. And so I think spending an average of 3 hours a week communicating with the team is actually way too much. I'd actually really like to bring that down lower, because what this communication is things that's outside of our normal process. So if I'm giving feedback to our video editor, or I'm giving feedback on a design or on a client project, that's where I want my communication time being spent. Whereas if I'm spending 3 hours on just general communication, that's telling me that there's certain parts of our process where I'm having to over communicate because I've failed to set the project up correctly. So that's essentially why I think that number should be, I definitely want to get that number lower. And then for my development hours, which are currently at 4, development is working on business process. This is working on the business, improving the operations. I definitely like to bump that up at least an average another 2 hours. So I'm spending more of my operations time on improving the system as opposed to fixing broken things that I failed in terms of communication. So that kind of does it for what I think I could improve with team. So I'm curious how much time you're spending managing your team if you have one. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll down here to content. Actually, I'm losing the header, so I'll just leave it like this. So for content, I'm just going to skip I'm going to skip straight to YouTube, because that's where I spend most of my time. And out of the 224 videos we posted last year, my average time across all of those, and this is average, right, was 4.38 hours. So we're pretty much just going to say 4.5 hours per video, whether that's a vlog, whether that's a vlog like this one, or it is a content video. Now, there are some videos that literally take 90 minutes, and there are other videos that take upwards of 10 hours. So there is quite a spectrum, but on average, 4.5 hours to make a video. I'd really like to shave that down to, I think, 4. I think if I could average 4 hours per video, I would, I think, be a happy camper. And I think at that point, I would just say, you know what? At that point, after that, you're probably optimizing a little too much, or you're starting to sacrifice video quality for speed of implementation. So that's kind of my goal for content over the next year. And that's what makes this process so powerful, and why I say time block, because now I can look and specifically see the exact amount of time it actually took me. So going down to sales funnels, I spent a lot of time, half of my sales funnel time was spent on sales calls, and considering my personal close rate, not the best use of my time. Sometimes you just have to look at it and go, yeah, you kind of suck at that. And I don't do very well with the sales calls. Yes, we've gotten clients. Yes, they've been happy. Some of them haven't. But in terms of the time it takes me to have those calls, I just need to find a better way for our sales process that's more in line with my strengths, because I definitely fumble like 9 out of 10 times on those calls. So that was 30 hours. And then the final one, product, this is really going to be important if you're in services like I am. So what I did is I looked at the 35 hours and 97 hours are actually all of our services, but I split them between the time we're spending communicating with the client and the time we're actually doing the work for the client. And out of the 133 hours, we're spending 35 of it in communication. So that's 26%. I'd really like to get this down to 15%. And this is something that I talk about every once in a while, where you pretty much, as a service provider, you have 2 jobs. You have the job you were hired for, and then you have the job of keeping your client actually happy. And so one of the ways that we're looking to combat this, as you can see down here, our service process. I've spent 45 hours, and this was mostly in the last quarter of 2019, where we're trying to refine our process so we can better manage the communication that goes back and forth, because we're losing 35 hours is a lot of time. It's 25% of our billable time is going towards things that aren't actually delivering value to the client. We're just answering random questions, or we're fixing things because our process isn't necessarily as streamlined as it should be. So my goal for this year is to bring that down to closer to the 15%. Again, these are just my personal numbers. When we add other people's numbers, the percentage goes up, unfortunately. Unfortunately. So it's probably closer to like 30 or 40% or something. But for me personally, it's at 21 or 26, 21. I said 21 because I'm looking at the ratio here. And so the final number I wanted to go over with you was the ratio of work to process improvement. And this is something that I completely failed on my very first year. I don't have time blocks for my first year. I'm sorry, that would be fun, but at least we can do this moving forward, right? Where in my first year, I pretty much did no improvement. I did no training. I did no process improvement. I was just scrambling for as many clients as I could get, and I wasn't actually improving myself as an advertiser. And I grew stagnant. My skills were no longer, wow, my skills were no longer at the level that they should have been for the prices that I was charging or the way I was marketing myself. So I don't know what the ideal ratio is, but right now I have a ratio of, for every 2 hours that I'm working on a client project, I'm spending an hour improving either the process or my skill in that in that project. That doesn't make any sense. Let me try that again. For every 2 hours that I spend working on using my skill to deliver a service to a client, I'm spending at least 1 hour improving myself or the process to deliver to the client. So I don't know what the ratio is, but you definitely want to make sure that you don't get stuck in the trap where you're just working, and you're not improving your process or improving yourself. And so with that, my voice is dying now, doing too many videos in a week. That is a summary of my 2019 hours. So I'm very curious what you think. If you think I'm a lazy bum and you're like, dude, you only work 45.8 hours, go ahead and comment below with what you think your actual work hours are. I'm still working on that ideal work hours video, but I think you're really going to enjoy it, and I'll share more as I complete the research on that. So quick summary of 2019, 1,967.9 hours, and a daily average of 9.2 hours. And I've personally found that if I go above 10, that I pretty much am on track to burnout. So as long as I keep my hours under 10, I'm gonna be able to keep going at a consistent marathon pace. As soon as I go above 10, it seems to be over. Maybe you're lucky and you can go longer and more weeks at plus 10-hour days before actually burning out. But we all burn out eventually sometime. So go ahead and comment below with what your ideal work hours would be. I think I've asked you to comment like 3 or 4 times. Just choose whichever one. Yeah, I'm talking over myself. I don't remember. So thank you so much for watching. I sincerely hope you got some value and inspiration out of how many hours building a business actually takes. I really wish I could see more of this from other people, but use this as your baseline or benchmark, and either a really low benchmark or a high benchmark to go for. So go ahead and hit that like button, comment with one of the 3 or 4 comments that I asked for, and until the next, keep building the business you love.